Many businesses think a stalled opportunity is only a problem for that specific deal. It is not. A stalled opportunity changes the meaning of the entire pipeline. At first, it may not look serious. The opportunity is still open, the contact is still visible, no formal rejection happened. So the case remains inside the system, as if momentum were still possible. That is where distortion begins. Because an opportunity that is open is not necessarily an opportunity that is moving. And when the pipeline fails to separate those two conditions clearly, the business starts reading false signals. It sees volume where there is only residue. It sees activity where there is only delay. It sees possible revenue where there may only be unresolved stagnation. This matters more than most businesses realize. A stalled opportunity does not only consume attention, it changes how healthy the pipeline appears. It makes the pipeline look fuller, it makes later stage volume look stronger, it makes future revenue feel closer than it really is. That creates false confidence. The business starts believing it has more real movement than it actually has. But stalled opportunities do not simply wait in a neutral state. They distort interpretation. And once interpretation is distorted, everything built on top of the pipeline becomes weaker. Forecasting becomes softer, prioritization becomes less accurate, follow-up effort gets distributed badly, and management attention starts reacting to opportunities that are still visible, but no longer truly progressing. This is why stalled opportunities should never be treated as harmless leftovers in the system. They are not passive. They actively weaken the pipeline's ability to describe reality honestly. And once that honesty is lost, the business may still see structure, but it becomes much harder to trust what the structure is saying.
What makes this especially dangerous is that stalled opportunities often survive inside the pipeline for emotional reasons, not operational ones. No one wants to close them too early. The lead once looked promising. A good conversation happened, a proposal was sent, some signal of intent existed. So the business keeps the opportunity open because closing it feels too definitive. But an opportunity does not stay healthy just because it once had momentum. If the next condition is not being reached, if the next step is not becoming real, if time is passing without meaningful movement, then the pipeline needs to reflect that honestly. Otherwise, stalled opportunities start occupying the same visual space as active ones. That is where confusion grows. Now the pipeline does not distinguish clearly between what is advancing and what is only lingering. Everything looks more alive than it really is. This weakens prioritization. Time and attention keep flowing toward cases that feel important, mainly because they are still visible. Meanwhile, stronger opportunities may not receive the same level of discipline because the system is already crowded with cases that should have been reclassified, slowed, or removed from active expectation. This is why pipeline hygiene matters. A healthy pipeline does not only show what is open, it shows what is actually moving. And if a business cannot tell the difference between those two conditions, then the pipeline starts rewarding visibility instead of progression. That is when stalled opportunities become more than slow deals. They become structural noise. And structural noise is one of the fastest ways to make a business feel busier while becoming less accurate at the same time.
This is also why stalled opportunities damage forecasting so easily. Forecasting depends on the assumption that the pipeline reflects real momentum. If a later stage contains opportunities that are no longer advancing, the business starts assigning weight to movement that is not actually happening. Now, expected revenue becomes inflated. Not because the math is wrong, but because the pipeline itself is telling a softer version of reality. That distortion is dangerous because it delays correction. The business keeps believing that enough value is forming, so urgency is reduced in the wrong places. Acquisition may not be adjusted soon enough. Follow-up priorities may stay blurred.
Management attention may remain attached to cases that no longer deserve the same active confidence. This is why time inside stage matters. An opportunity that remains visible without reaching the next condition should not be treated as if nothing has changed. Time is information. It tells the business whether momentum is still alive, whether friction is increasing, or whether the opportunity is staying open only because no one has named the stall clearly enough. Without that discipline, the pipeline starts preserving optimism instead of preserving accuracy. And once that happens, revenue becomes harder to read. Not because the business lacks data, but because stalled cases are weakening the meaning of the data it already has.
A stalled opportunity also changes behavior inside the business. Once a case remains open long enough, people start adapting around it. They check it again, they mention it in meetings, they keep it mentally present. They hesitate to let it go because some possibility still seems to remain. This creates a hidden cost. The opportunity is no longer producing clear movement, but it is still consuming cognitive space. And cognitive space matters, because every stalled case competes with active opportunities for attention, interpretation, and follow-up energy. Now the business is not only carrying the weight of real momentum, it is also carrying the weight of unresolved pipeline residue. That makes execution heavier. The team feels busy, but not necessarily effective. The pipeline looks populated, but not necessarily healthy. This is where stalled opportunities start distorting more than forecasting. They distort focus. A strong system should make it easier to say, this is still moving, this is slowing down, and this no longer deserves active expectation at the same level. Without that clarity, everything stays partially alive. And when everything stays partially alive, the business loses one of the main benefits of having a pipeline at all. Priority becomes less visible. That is why stalled opportunities should not be treated as harmless delays. They change how the whole system distributes energy. And once energy is distributed badly, even good opportunities become harder to move with the discipline they deserve. The solution is not to remove every slow opportunity immediately. The solution is to make stalled movement visible enough that the business can classify it correctly. That is the difference between a pipeline that informs and a pipeline that only stores. A healthy system should help the business see when an opportunity is still active, when it is slowing, and when it has stopped progressing in any meaningful way. Those are not the same conditions, and they should not receive the same level of confidence, the same forecasting weight, or the same follow-up intensity. This is where pipeline discipline starts protecting clarity. A stalled opportunity may still deserve visibility, but it should not keep distorting how the business reads momentum. It should not sit inside the same expectations as opportunities that are still advancing with energy. That separation matters, because once stalled cases are classified honestly, the pipeline becomes easier to trust again. Now, active opportunities carry more real meaning. Forecasting becomes cleaner, priorities become sharper, and the business spends less time interpreting residue as if it were progress. That is the real value of handling stalled opportunities well. Not being negative, not closing things aggressively, but protecting the pipeline from confusion that stays open longer than it should. When stalled opportunities remain mixed with real movement, the pipeline stops helping the business think clearly. It still looks active, but it becomes less honest. That is the real cost. A pipeline should not only show what is still open, it should show what is still alive. Because once those two conditions are treated as if they were the same, forecasting weakens, priorities blur, and attention gets tied to opportunities that no longer justify the same level of confidence. This is why stalled opportunities do not just slow individual deals. They distort the way the entire pipeline is interpreted. And once interpretation weakens, control weakens with it. A healthier system does not protect optimism. It protects clarity. That is what keeps the pipeline useful, trustworthy, and strong enough to support better decisions.